Hi all, this is a high-level correspondence game between two ICCF World Champions. Playing white is Ivar Bern from Norway, and playing black is the Dutch billionaire Oosterom, who has won the ICCF World Championship twice. So they're both masters of their game in correspondence chess. It's a bit like Kasparov versus Karpov in over-the-board chess. Ivar Bern playing white, he played d4, and Oosterom played the King's Indian defence, which is an interesting choice in correspondence, because it is a slightly risky opening. It's risky in over the board, but in correspondence it's put under even greater scrutiny. And in this game, after bishop e2, e5, and Ivar Bern castling, the usual move in the classical variation is knight c6 now. But Oosterom played knight a6, which is a bit more unusual. It has some interesting ideas, potentially for the knight coming to c5 later, especially if this pawn goes forward. Ivar Bern reacted very well against it. He played bishop e3 here. So he's not concerned about getting a kind of Maroczy bind type position if black played e takes d4. Black didn't do that. Instead, knight g4 was played. And now Ivar played bishop g5. So he's provoking black to play f6, creating another pawn weakness. Oosterom, however, played queen e8 now, and white now simplified in the centre with d takes e5, and we have d takes e5 being played by black. And now queen c1. Now this is a dual purpose move. As well as supporting this fianchetto bishop exchange to try and weaken black's dark squares, it also supports this c5 idea, because if the knight takes on c5, then knight d5, and white's queen will be helping this attack on c7. So it's got a couple of ideas of attacking on both sides of the board at the same time, and we're going to see this later. f6, bishop d2, and now black plays f5, which is a typical King's Indian move, but here it doesn't look as though black's going to get the kind of closed position which a lot of King's Indian players like, because of this earlier exchange in the centre. Ivar played c5 here now, so using this idea of the queen attacking on this c7 pawn if that pawn is taken. And now king h8 was played, and now h3. The knight went back to f6, and now white played e takes f5, so he wants to kind of expose the black pawns to put them under pressure. Oosterom played e4, and now we see what seems to be quite a controversial move, and it's often beginner's advice that knights on the rim are dim. Nevertheless, Ivar Bern puts the knight on the rim, but he's certainly far from dim. He's got a very specific reason for doing this. After bishop takes f5, he damages black's pawn structure now with bishop takes a6. So after b takes a6, white has a higher quality pawn structure, which would get more and more important towards the endgame. Now, even if we can't find any tactical flaws in this game, because it's not like an over-the-board game, we can look at the overall strategy, and definitely the pawn structure is a high-level strategy, a deep consideration to be made, because if one side has a higher quality pawn structure, the potential for passed pawns later, or squeezing later, is increased, whilst the other side's pawn structure could be less mobile. In this game, Ivar went for simplification now, so he's heading for a nice ending. So bishop takes g7, king takes g7, queen g5, and after h6 he retreated to g3. However, there is this tactical concern about this knight being trapped here now, But here, white played very resourcefully with rook AE1. It's got a very nice idea now, which Oosterom didn't test. But if he had tried to play queen h5 here, trying to win this knight, then knight takes e4 is okay, e.g. queen takes h4, and now knight takes f6. And if rook takes f6, then rook e7 check here, and white is much better. E.g., if rook f7, that would be a blunder, because if rook takes f7, king takes f7, and queen f3, hitting f7 and a8 rook, winning the exchange. So this has all been tactically worked out, that this knight doesn't have to be lost. So if we go back here, rook d8 was played, and now knight f3, bishop b5. White doesn't mind the simplification because he still has a higher quality pawn structure. So knight e5, and now queen takes b2 was played, which does isolate these two pawns. Knight g4, and again we see white going for the simplification, so he's just going for a better rook and pawn ending, really. And this probing of the weakness puts black under more pressure. So rook e7, now h takes g5, and black played rook g6 here. So black is left with these horrible pawns now after g takes h6, king h7, queen f4. This e pawn is under great pressure, and white now ends up, after queen e5 and this simplification, the smoke is clearing, and these two pawns are going to be seen as two connected passed pawns soon, after this f4 and these simplifications. White has now these two passed pawns, and again the higher quality pawn structure for the ending. And white can try and get the king now towards the centre via f3, which is what he plays. And now he puts black under pressure. In particular, this pawn is easily blockaded, but also white's now threatening stuff like king e3. But he plays check here, and now g5, and we see the greater mobility of white's two pawns here, and black's pawns are just static. So the investment in that higher quality pawn structure has paid off here. And again, white doesn't mind the further simplification to a rook and pawn ending, removing one of the rooks. And after this move, black had had enough. These two pawns are just gaining in strength, and this is a clearly winning ending for white now. So Oosterom, 2 times ICCF World Champion, resigned now against Ivar Bern. Well played, Ivar. A fantastic win in the Olympiad.